Hi, Pam Hosel here from Entrepreneur Ready and the How to Start Something online accelerator. And I am excited to be talking with you, Teresa Weber from All Heart Baking Co. Welcome.
Thank you, Pam. Excited to be here.
I want to dive right in. Most people would assume that if you start a cookie company, it would be because you love baking. But I've heard you say that you didn't really love it. So, how did this all happen?
Yeah, I don't love baking, which is a weird thing to say as a cookie entrepreneur. But every year I would do it once a year at the holidays, as like gifts for friends and colleagues and things like that. Folks would always say to me, "You should sell these cookies," and I would come up with a whole list of reasons why that was crazy. Um, and it came to a point where I was looking to make a change from my 20-year career in fundraising, nonprofit fundraising. And it was around the holidays. I was still trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. And someone said, you should sell your cookies. And I was like, huh, what if? And what if sort of became the guiding question for this journey. As soon as I said, what if, I started coming up with ideas, and I've always enjoyed being creative with food. I come from a very foodie family, and it just sort of it went from there. So yeah,
Exciting.
cookies are my medium, my canvas.
They're your canvas. And when you went all in, you decided
Yeah,
to quit your job. Talk
yeah.
to me. What, what did you know? What happened?
Yeah, so as I said, I was kind of looking to leave fundraising. And I had watched, enough Shark Tank to hear Mark Cuban sort of in the back of my mind saying, if you're going to do it, you have to go all in. It's really, really hard to work a full-time job and build a business. I have lots and lots of friends who are doing just that. So I know it can be done, but I had the security and the safety net to be able to make that leap. And I really wanted to give it a go. I wanted to leave my job anyway.
Yeah.
And so
And
it all aligned.
what did you know then, or what did you believe then besides that you needed to go all in?
I knew that I didn't know enough. I knew nothing. That's pretty much what I knew.
So you were really self-aware, but you understood that it was time in your life for a change.
Yes, it was time for a change, and I wanted to do something creative. I had creative outlets in my previous life, but I really wanted to explore that side of myself. And honestly, the appeal of working for myself was really strong. Being able to set my own schedule and to have ideas and to pursue them on my own without having someone else telling me there's not budget for that, or we don't have the structure for that, or it was really appealing. But I knew that I needed support. I knew I needed guidance because I've never built a business before. So
So you didn't understand when you look at back right then at that moment, the parts you didn't understand were how to build, but more specifically, how would you define it now, what you didn't understand?
yeah, I think I had a good sense of you know um the basics, right? Like I knew how to make cookies, but I didn't know how to market them. I didn't know anything about Instagram. I had like an Instagram account that I think, a personal Instagram account that had I think 5 posts on it. Like I wasn't using it. Um So I didn't know how to market the cookies. I didn't know how to build a website. I didn't know how to do e-commerce. I didn't know all of the regulations that go along with having a cottage industry business. I started in my home. I'm no longer in my home, but I started there. So there are lots of rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know anything about business models, how to incorporate, what to,
It was a
LLC.
lot, right?
It was a lot.
So you described the journey you've been on as building the plane while you're flying it.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what does that look like?
Yeah. I think it's, um, you know, s- I can be a perfectionist sometimes, and I think that there is the danger when you're building something to wait until you have all of the answers before you move forward, right? But you can't do that with entrepreneurship. There's not enough time to sit back and gather all of the information before acting. You sort of have to act at the same time that you're gathering. And that's what I mean by building the plane while flying it. I have to make the cookies and get out there and start selling them while I'm also still figuring out how to best sell them or how to market them or whatever it is.
Fascinating. It's so true. You joined the Entrepreneur Ready program when you were already in revenue. What were you hoping? Why did you join? What were you hoping to get out of it?
So I think I have been doing my educational piece as sort of piecemeal and really just talking to other people who had been in the business, which is something I found incredibly useful and would highly recommend to others starting out. But I knew that I needed more structure and
Mm.
sort of to go back to what I said before, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was hoping to come into this program to A, get some structure, and B, to really understand what are all the facets, what are the things that I'm not even thinking about because I don't know that I'm supposed to be thinking about them, right? Yeah, and knowing that the program was much longer than a lot of other programs I looked at. 6 months allows you to not only um, cover a lot of territory, but also to go deep. And I'm maybe going to jump ahead a little here, but I want to say that um, 6 months also gives you the opportunity to come back to themes and reinforce them over and over again. So you start with something early on and then you build on it and you build on it and you build on it and then you get 3 weeks later and it comes back around and now you have a different understanding of it because of all the layering, right?
Yeah.
So
So
you
talk to
really
us
can dig
about,
in.
yeah, talk to me about that. So you get in the program. What are the biggest breakthroughs, 3 to 4 breakthroughs that happen for you and your venture as you go through a more structured process?
Sure. So I think I'm going to start pretty broad here and say that for me, one of the things I loved about the program is that it was this beautiful combination of both philosophy as well as nuts and bolts, pedal to the metal. And so for me, starting with that philosophical piece of like, why am I doing this? Like, what drives me? For me has been super foundational and has shown up in practical ways throughout this journey, right? So understanding what are my core values, how does that connect to this business? Why am I doing this? Like, what is my why? Has then, and so for me, like the fundamental word that comes up over and over and over again when I look at these things is joy, right? I want to put joy out into the world. I want my cookies to like bring you a moment of joy. And so that comes up in practical ways when I'm dealing with customers, or maybe I'm not having my best day, but I know that I want to show up with joy. I want the customer to have a joyful experience. So I put on my best face. Or if I have a customer complaint, how do I respond to that, right? I go back to my 5 core values that I developed in this program.
And those are?
Of course, now I'm going to have brain freeze and not remember them all, but joy, creativity, collaboration, authenticity, and kindness.
So all of what you worked on personally became the brand.
It became the brand. It is the brand for sure. Um, and I use it over and over and over again. So I would say that on a foundational level was one of the things that was really meaningful to me from the program. I think the one of the other things that, and it's something that I would say to new entrepreneurs, that was really valuable to me from the program and something I think every entrepreneur needs to do is stay curious, right? The
Mm.
program is partially centered on this concept of curiosity conversations. And I think having a curiosity mindset in general, um, you know, helped me in the program refine what it was that I wanted to focus on. I have multiple different ways that I can sell my cookies, lots of different sales channels, right? And through my curiosity conversations in the program, I was able to shift from what I thought I wanted to focus on, which was like, corporate gifting, to where I am now, which is really kind of focusing my efforts on e-commerce. And it was through that process of curiosity conversations, along with some of the financial work that we did, understanding our cost of goods sold, the additional costs that are involved with online, I'm sorry, with corporate gifting versus online, et cetera. Um, so that was incredibly useful to me in the program. And I think for all entrepreneurs, because the more you listen and ask questions, the more opportunities are going to open for you.
I find it fascinating because you've really adopted curiosity conversations and the whole empathy thing and what we call customer discovery. When you think about it, you came into the program kind of committed to the idea of getting on retail shelves. Can you just thread the needle for us on how curiosity conversation has taken you from where you thought you would be to where you are, just a little? And then the products that curiosity, what's changed in your business because of curiosity conversation, how the client has driven your product.
Absolutely. So I had this idea that I would do a whole bunch of wholesale, which is what you're talking about, getting onto retail shelves, and then also these like corporate gifts, right? And so when I was talking to folks about what they were looking for, it just became clear to me that as a small business, first of all, with wholesale, while the margins are there, I'm not able to produce at a quantity level yet to really sustain wholesale.
Yeah,
And the cookies are artisanal, right? So they're expensive. So they're not going to show up on a grocery shelf. If they're going to
right.
show up on a shelf, it's going to be at like a boutique or a specialty food store. Um, and I just found that in talking to people, I just wasn't there yet. And then with the corporate gifting, there's so many layers to it, like additional costs, right? Like the customized ribbon and the customized tissue and the company sticker, logo sticker, and all of that. Like the costs ended up, when I added it all up, I realized that again, I wanted to establish the brand more before going into that so that I could justify the higher price
But
for
the great thing was you did this all rapidly, right? You didn't go out and launch that whole business and the margins weren't there and it was overly complicated and the channel wasn't there, right?
right,
You were
right.
able this de-risking process of being able to work it out, take it out there, talk to the client, look at the financials, and then you pivoted, right? So
Hmm.
you think you're going to go retail, the customer discovery takes you to corporate. How far do you get down corporate before you pivot in the program to
the,
direct?
the direct. I think um I think I was pretty far into it, like maybe, maybe step 5 or 6 out of the 7. You know, but I think what I
What
was finding,
happened? What happened? Like, tell us the moment you're like, boom, and then how did that first client, how did those clients come from that? Because you've been creating revenue, right? So now you're
yeah,
like,
I think what I discovered was really that the consumer experience. So going back to sort of that joy piece, I think what I found more than anything, to be honest, is that I'm just not ready to let go of the direct to consumer piece. Like the experience of selling to individuals and getting individual feedback and having that shared moment of joy with those people um, is really what drives me. And I think the beginning stages of entrepreneurship are so hard and exhausting, and you need to find where your joy is, right? And for me, the
mm,
joy is in that customer experience. And I just found that as I was working through the steps and I had refocused to corporate and I just wasn't finding the joy.
I
Like,
love this because you know yourself, and this is research ties this all together. We're gritty and resilient where it matters and where we get that meaning and fulfillment. So you had this really smart GPS system saying, hey, I'm going to really be able to win if I can stay. So you've gone to a lot of events and you've gone to a lot
yeah.
of trade shows. It's almost like you've had a moving store as your distribution strategy,
Yes,
which
exactly.
actually fuels you, right?
And to go to the second part of your question in terms of how customer conversations have shaped the company, I've had multiple ways in which that's happened. And I think the most, the biggest change I made based on customer feedback is that I was giving out these samples of my cookies at shows and or markets, and people kept saying to me like, oh, this is too much. It was like a 2 bite cookie that I was giving out as a sample. And so people were saying, well, the sample's too big. And then people were also saying like, oh, I'd love to have like a little bag of these. That would be so fun. Like these are so cute. And so out of that was born a whole new um, you know, product line, if you will, of what I call nibbles. And they are these little 2 bite cookies. And they come in a little bag and they sell like crazy. And that came directly from talking to customers about what they were looking for, asking, and even, talking to them about parties that they throw, or what, like people have told me over and over again that they want to put them at place settings, right? Like, how cute is it to have a dinner party and then have these little cookies at place settings? Um,
So
so
by
that's a very
having your
direct.
ear to the client, you're constantly tweaking things like your packaging. I saw you went to lavender. You've got lavender
Mhm.
in, and that's tied back to your customer feedback. So
Yep.
what other massive actions have you taken with the breakthroughs as you were working through that have really helped build the business?
Yeah, I think so when I finally realized that my energy, the biggest return on my energy was really going to be staying with direct to consumer and building an online presence. It became clear to me that a couple things had to happen. Like I had a website. It was not great. So I needed to redesign the website to make it really e-commerce friendly. I moved from Squarespace to Shopify. I had a friend who's a web
What kind
designer.
of difference have you found making that one change?
Oh my gosh, Shopify, they should pay me for how much I glow them up, because it's amazing the level of sophistication, and it's really geared toward people who are selling online. And so, there's just a lot more customization you can do. It auto calculates all your shipping. It's very intuitive. It has an amazing AI support bot built into it that literally, like, if I want to change something on the page, it will help me write code to change whatever it is on the page. I mean, I don't know anything about coding, but
Right.
here I am like coding, it's like go to line 139 and type this in, and I'm
And you're
coding my
changing
own
it.
website. Yeah, it's amazing.
What you talk a little bit about when you were in the program, you were making your cookies in your house. So what's
Yes.
changed
Yeah.
there?
So that's, I would say, the other big thing as I made this refocus my efforts was I knew I needed to get out of my house. There are lots of restrictions around being a cottage industry food processor.
Hmm.
And one of the biggest ones is that you can only sell in New York State. And I think that's relatively true across states. Wherever your home-based business is, you can really only sell within that state for food. That's food specific. So I knew I needed to get into a commercial kitchen. And moving into the commercial kitchen was perfectly aligned timing wise because about a month and a half after I got my license from the New York State Department of Agriculture saying that I was certified, I was in a legit commercial kitchen. I can now sell outside New York. The cookies were tapped to be on The View, which that is the kind of exposure that every small business dreams of, right? And it happens super organically. And I don't want to sound like, you
Take
know,
us inside. How did it
well,
happen?
so like I don't want to be like overly, sappy about it, but I'm going to go back to those core foundational values of showing up authentically with kindness and joy. And it
Mm,
happened because I was at a street fair and I brought all of that energy to the market that I was doing, and I met a woman. She bought 3 cookies, just 3. And she fell in love with the brand. She fell in love with the cookies, and she happens to be the makeup artist for one of the hosts of The View. And they had been talking recently about what they were going to recommend as, a holiday gift. They do a segment that's sort of last minute holiday gifts. And she said, I'd really love to take some of your cookies in
wow.
to give to my boss. And that's how it happened. No PR firm, no paid sponsorship, nothing like that. It just happened very organically.
What did people not see about what happened with the view?
The 20-hour days trying to prepare.
Yeah, and you had a huge learning lesson right after, which I think is
Yeah.
so powerful to share because as entrepreneurs, we always see the upside, right? Like all heart God on the view. And
Yes.
so there's the work behind it, but there's also what you navigated through it.
Yeah, so we worked our tushies off these super long days to try to make as many cookies as we could in the month leading up because we really only had like a month and change to prepare
Mm,
um, for our for our airing, and so we just worked to make as many cookies as we could, and we sold out in less than 8 hours.
wow.
Um, it was amazing, over 200 orders. It was incredible. And then, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks later, because there were the holidays, and New Year's and all of that. About 2 weeks later, I started getting emails from people saying the cookies weren't good. And I was shocked. I've literally never heard someone say they weren't good. I've occasionally heard someone say, like, oh, it's not for me, right? I like
Right, 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 right.
that, whatever. So when I dug into it, it turned out that something went wrong with the packaging. I had been using the same packaging for over 2 years.
Wow.
And I went to check. I had some cookies still that I hadn't sold that I had held back as sort of like just in case cookies. And I went to check them and they were stale. And there is literally no reason why they should have been stale. And I've never encountered that issue in 2.5 years of doing this. And so we had to really go back to our values and figure out how we were going to handle it. And we addressed it directly. We did not connect with every single customer who had bought that particular item,
Right.
but we reached out to them. And of the people who we were able to dialogue with, we did whatever we could to make it right. We offered them
Mm,
options, we offered them refunds, we offered them store credit, we offered to send them new cookies. I actually was really surprised by the number of people who chose new cookies because it gave me faith that people really wanted to experience the cookies and it wasn't just, give me my money back, you know? There was a real there was a real sort of moment of connection in that, and we turned it around with most of the people, which was
yeah.
great.
What have you learned from these hard moments?
Ooh. I think that uh, my resiliency has improved, and to not it's hard not to take it personally when it's your baby, you know? You
Hmm.
put so much of yourself into it, but at the end of the day, if you want to be successful, you also have to remember that it's a business.
Mm.
And you know, protecting the business, protecting the brand is really what's most important. It's not about your feelings. You can have your feelings off to the side, but it's really about protecting the brand and what's going to be best for the brand.
Yeah, and there's such integrity when, we hear branding, but it almost sounds surface. But it becomes the essence. It's like a person's character. It's when I turn you around, 360 degrees, do I experience the same thing from this organization?
Right.
And for me, the tough moments allow us to be who we really are as an organization. And if it's tied to our why, right, then people
Mhm.
just see, oh, because we're all human. So,
Right.
growth, you're now over 6 digits, you're growing, you're scaling. Tell me what challenges you're facing now and what does the future look like?
So for us right now, it's how to scale. So I'm currently, the business is still predominantly just me. I do have some uh, help here and there, but it's really a one woman show still, and I can only make so many cookies in a day. And so we're at the point of trying to figure out how to grow the business, and that has two strategic components to it, which is space and people, right? I need more people, but I need a bigger space if I'm going to have more people. And so then there are lots of questions around, do I move into the space that I need right now, or do I plan for the future, the space I'm going to need in 3 years or 5 years as the business continues to grow? And can I support that financially? And so I'm going back to some of the financial modeling we did in the program and creating projections, creating 3 different scenarios. I did a lot of work on this last night, actually, and going back to sort of the lessons I learned in the program about how important that is to figure out what you can actually afford, right? Or how
Yeah.
many units you have to sell to be able to afford that.
Yeah, like where is break even, especially with a product, and each of your products, you have a couple products, so you have a different cost of goods and a margin,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and
And
trying to average across different products and yeah, it's been really eye-opening. I mean, we have a good contribution margin, which is helpful, but I still have to sell a lot of cookies to meet my fixed and variable costs. So,
yeah, I think it's It helps when we get confident on our inflows and our outflows. As you compare yourself now to being able to look at your numbers versus before, what's the biggest difference in you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think intuitively when I was not really looking at the numbers, through models, I think I knew I was doing well, right? Because money was coming in. I was
Right.
making money. I had cash in the bank. I could pay all my bills. That was good. But now that I'm actually looking at the numbers, I have real confidence that I can make those just strategic decisions, right? That I'm not doing it willy-nilly, that I have the numbers to back up the decisions that I need to make. I haven't made the decisions yet because I'm still processing, but I know that there's real data there to support decision making, as opposed
Yeah.
to just relying on my gut.
Yeah, because your financials become a recipe. Like I think of that you're putting the same ingredients in and you get the consistency of the cookie. In a
Hmm.
product, eventually each of the cost of goods are a percentage, right? They're a part of
Hmm.
the recipe and they're
Right.
making something that then we sell for a price, and the gap between what it cost and what we sold it for is our margin, right?
Hmm.
And so there's this magic, I think, when the founder who might not feel good with numbers really understands their own inflows and outflows, because you're right, that gives you so much confidence on the decisions to make or other ideas of how to create value,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or like you said before, well, wow, this distribution path doesn't look good because this is what the cost recipe leads to.
And the
So,
other piece of that, Pam, that I just want for any other product-based businesses who may be watching this, the other thing that the next step that I'm taking with the numbers is to really look at um, production. And because what I'm finding is I'll overproduce for a particular
mm,
event, and that's a cost, right? Like
yes,
that's an expense. And
food waste, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. On top of it, it's wasteful. But it's the wasted labor that went into making
Oh
that
yeah, it's a
wasted,
whole line item, right? On your
it's
P&L,
it's
everything
a
you have to
lot.
throw away.
Yeah, and so understanding your numbers is not just about that strategic decision making I was talking about, but it's also about understanding where you can maximize profit. Because I'm at a point right now where I don't feel that I can increase my pricing, which is a
Right?
lever that a lot of people choose to pull, right? I'm
Yeah, but as
already
we get, it depends on your market, it depends on what's happening with the economy, it depends where you're already at in the
right.
pricing structure and the value thing. There's so many things, especially right now with what's going on, right?
Exactly. So now I'm looking at, okay, I can't pull that lever, but what lever can I pull? I can look at my expenses. I can look
Hmm.
at where I'm spending, how I'm spending, why I'm spending. And the numbers are so useful to that. And I would say in the 2 years since taking the program, the thing that's really changed for me in terms of figuring things out is AI. I spent a lot of time with Claude last night. We were best buddies. And AI is not perfect. You really have to pay attention, but it can be a real partner.
Yeah, it can
Yeah.
be a real partner. What's changed most about you through this process of building a company, building All Heart?
On a personal level, yeah, I would say just I think my confidence, and belief in myself, that I've always felt like I had leadership qualities, if it's okay to say that. But like now that I'm actually leading a company, I really feel a lot more confidence in my capabilities. And it's validated through the sort of arc of the company, right? The company is going up, 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 in a market where a lot of companies close within the first 3 years, you know? So, um, I think, yeah, it's been a real confidence boost. And I would just say to, I'm having fun, right? The kind of stress that's inherent in owning your own business is so different than the stress you experience working for someone else. And it's a motivating stress, right? It's a good
Hmm.
stress. Stress is not always bad.
Hmm.
Um, so I think understanding myself better around what brings me happiness and joy and spending more time on that through the business.
What would you say to someone if they're watching and maybe they have an idea, maybe they've been experimenting, maybe they, like you, have been making some food product once a year and all their friends are like, "What? Why isn't this available for purchase?" What would you say to them?
Um, do it. I would say if it feels aligned with what you want for yourself, that you should jump in with both feet. You know,
Mm.
I think success comes to people when they're doing what's meant for them, and only you know that, right? Like, but certainly if you're doing something from 9 to 5 that drains all your energy, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's not aligned, right? So it doesn't hurt to do your research. It doesn't hurt to talk to other people who are in the field first, gather some intel, right? But I'll go back to what I said before. Don't get stuck in gathering all of the information and trying to make it perfect before you start. You just have to start and find a good program, like How to Start Something, that can support you on that journey once you make that decision to start.
Well, one of the questions we have for you is, gosh, I'm just really nervous about quitting my job, and starting something. What did you understand about starting a business that allowed you to have that confidence or
So I really looked at what kind of runway do I have, right? How long can I give myself?
and we can confirm runway, like how much capital you had, how much cash
Right, how
flow
much
you had.
savings do I have? What's my fallback plan? I'm someone who likes to have a fallback plan, right? So,
Hmm.
fortunately for me, I worked in an industry where my skill set is in demand. You know, I worked in nonprofit fundraising and had a lot of success. So I knew I had that to fall back on. But honestly, I was also comfortable with the idea that I could be a barista at Starbucks, you know, they give health insurance. Like that was the thing that I had in my head. I was like, health insurance.
Yeah.
Um,
So you went to the worst case. I love this.
yeah.
The worst
Like
case scenario is I'm a barista somewhere and I'm going to have joy because I'm going to be with people and giving them
I'm
coffee.
gonna get to give people a good start to their day, right? Like I'm gonna greet them with a big smile. I'm gonna hand them their coffee, which they need, and I'm gonna get to live my joy, right? So I had sort of this backup idea of what happens if this doesn't work? How much time and money and energy and effort, like I really thought about that. Like how much runway can I give myself? And I said, all right, and I said 3 years. That's what I said. I said if I'm not seeing significant growth year over year for 3 years, then I'm going to fold it all in, and I'm going to find something else. I'm going to be a barista at Starbucks, or I'm going to go back to fundraising, or whatever comes next, but or sell my house and move abroad. I had lots of different ideas of what I could do, but I really thought about what I could give to the business before I said, okay, this is or isn't working.
Wow. Well, we now know why your name is All Heart because you are all heart. I mean, I can
You know?
feel it. Just, I've loved working with you when you were in the program and then being a part of our alum community, just watching you grow. But you're you are who you are, and it's showing up, and your product has become an extension of this amazing human being, and I think
Oh,
that's why it's resonating so
thank
much.
you.
And you've been really thoughtful about building, like you said, with structure and with support and with team, and even thoughtful in thinking of what does success look like, and I'm willing to walk away if it doesn't hit this, and if I can't be this person. I just want to thank you, Teresa, for joining us.
Thank you.
Everyone else, you can find All Heart and Teresa at the links in the description. And if anyone else is at this stage where they're thinking, what if, and they're kind of had dreams or they're stuck, this is exactly the stage, and this is exactly who we help over at howtostartsomething.com. So check us out there. And I'm going to order some cookies.
And I would just say, Pam, thank you so much for having me. And if anyone watching this is thinking about starting their own company, please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. I do respond to all of my messages directly. And more importantly, I'm happy to talk to you about the program and help you decide if it's the right fit for you.
Thank you, Teresa, and have a great day
Thank you.
baking.
Have a great day. Thank you so much, Pam.
Bye bye.
Bye.